Good morning. Welcome to Get Real with Rick Dancer, and we have Mark Herbert, who is running for House District number 11, which, if for people who don't know, and you guys, full disclosure, this is a paid, just like all the other shows I do, most of the shows that I do, they are paid for, so I just want to be really upfront about that. Mark's paying to be on here.
Yep.
But I like to, you guys always are talking about how do I get more informed, and I told you don't read the voters pamphlet because that is just a lot of hype from people. So the best thing to do is talk to folks. And so when folks like Mark, who are running for a House seat that is now open, it's been held by Phil Barnhart for years, and now it's open, and a bunch of people have jumped in, and he's one of them. And so Mark, okay, so can I just start real fast? So
Sure.
we're at, one of the things that I really enjoy about this is Mark is right now, he'll tell what he does, but right now he is the interim director at Albert Taylor, Albert Taylor, and it's an organization that takes care of folks with different abilities. It's kind of like the agency that my brother-in-law's in, Oregon Supported Living Program. They both do the same kind of work. So they do really good work. He's got a great education now after being here for how long?
It's been almost 9 months, off and on.
So what I want you to do is tell people what was going on here. We're just going to be really open about it, because that's one of the things Mark really has talked about with me in about the 15 minutes we've been chatting is, tell me what you've done here, because you're a management consultant. So you come in and help businesses get back on their feet.
Yep. And what happened here, Rick, is Albert Taylor has been around for years, and they do very, very, very good work. But like a lot of organizations that are doing this kind of work, they struggle. Margins are very, very tight. They don't have the ability, like a private business, to go out and set rates and compete in that kind of a way.
It's controlled by the state.
Absolutely. The state sets the rates. The state even controls the process of how people come to be served and making those selections. And what happened is that I think that the leadership ran into some issues of being understaffed, overworked, and the decision making just got kind of bruised, and as a result the previous executive director left. And so my initial role was coming in was I was brought in by the board of directors to help them identify and locate a new executive director to run the agency. As we started through that process, we found that there were actually issues going on operationally. We were struggling more than we realized. We were struggling financially, and you can't do the kind of work we do if you can't pay your bills. And so in January, I actually stepped in with a more hands-on role to try to turn the agency around.
Because how much you were in the agency was in the hole.
Almost $500,000.
$500,000 about.
Yes.
And so now here's the interesting part. Because you guys, there's a method to this story, and I want you to pay attention because the same sort of thing is going on in Salem. So you went to, talk about the union, because there's a union that works through all these different agencies with awesome people who do awesome work for very little pay. And you went to the union, and kind of tell that story.
Yeah, well, one of the things that happened is the state authorized a little bit over a year ago a 5% rate increase. And so, not surprisingly, a lot of the people representing the bargaining unit, the union employees, felt like, well, that 5% should be ours. Okay, the state authorized that. We don't make a lot of money. We should see that increase reflected in our wages. And in fact, the previous administration agreed to that. What we found, however, was that given where we were financially, paying that 5% increase would have probably put us out of business.
It would have cost about $1 million.
It wouldn't have cost that much initially, but overall, it would have submarined us. It would have put us, given where we were already $500,000 in the hole, adding that expense would have put us under.
So you went to the union and said, and just showed them the book. This is what we've got.
Yes, I said, let's talk about what we agree upon. And one of the things we talk a lot about is at Albert Taylor we have 3 primary goals, Rick. And I think it's very, very important for people out there in the public to hear about the goals of this agency. The first goal of this agency is to provide a safe and secure environment for the people that we serve. That means safe physically, it means safe mentally, it means safe emotionally. That's the number one goal of this agency. The second goal that we have that ties to that first goal is to provide that same safety and security for our employees. because our employees can't provide that kind of safety and security if they don't feel safe and secure themselves. And then the third one that kind of is the overarching thing is, in order to do that, we have to run a fiscally smart business.
To make sure those two goals,
Exactly.
the first two goals, are taken care of.
Exactly. The margin doesn't take care of itself. As a lot of people, I get chided a lot because I work with a lot of not-for-profits, and I tell people, don't use the word nonprofit, because nonprofit means that your outgo exceeds your income. And if you can't cover your bills, you can't do the work that you're trying to do. And that's where we were.
So you went to the union. I keep taking you back
Sure.
to the story. That's my job.
Yep.
So you go to the union and you present your case,
Yep.
and being the reasonable people that they are,
Right.
they look at it and say, you're saying we can't pay that, so it's
Right.
going to, the whole agency is going to go belly up.
Right.
And all these people will be left out, and the
Yes.
union sees that too, and they don't want to do that to people.
Exactly.
And so you make a compromise.
It was pretty historic. We sat down with them and said, we're going to do things differently. We are going to provide you with exactly the same information we provide our board of directors with. We're going to provide you with the same information we provide our management team with, so that you know this really is a new trust-based relationship. And we think we all agree on those first three things. How do we get there? And so we proposed to them and said, we want to fund that increase for you, but in order to do that, we have to get the ship righted. And so what we asked them to do is we asked them to work with us to postpone that increase. And they agreed to do that, which is huge. And in return for that, we've also formed an operating committee that says, as we move forward, we move forward together. That means union leadership and leadership of the agency to focus on those three goals.
Okay, so let's take some questions. One, Jason, you asked a question earlier. How a House seat opens is whoever holds that seat says they're not going to run again. So yep. Mr. Barnhart is not running again, so that means the seat's open for anybody new to come in. Otherwise, he would be the incumbent, and then people would be running against him. So he's not running anymore, and so that's what opens a seat. CJ, nearly every year, tens of thousands of college students in your district, Mark, face massive tuition hikes, largely because of union pressure. How will you address this issue?
Well, in fairness, CJ, I'm not sure that union pressure is the entire way we get there. I do think that the request for wage increases and everything does put additional financial pressure on the organization, but I'm not going to lay that all at the hands of the unions. I just want to be clear about that up front. I think that the way I would approach it as a legislature is the same way I've approached it as a management consultant and executive for the last 35 years, is sit down with people and saying, okay, we have a mission we're trying to do. And how do we create a win-win versus a win-lose situation? And I don't think that we talk to our employees enough that way and say, let's put the cards on the table. Let's sit down and talk about, if we do this, if we have to fund those pay increases, what does it mean we don't do? Does it mean we don't do capital improvement? Does it mean we have to reduce class sizes? Is to sit down and say, what can we agree on? What are we trying to do? What's the mission?
So you want to go into, and I think this is what hasn't happened for so long, is to find out why. Okay, so let's go back to the why. You and I already kind of in the same boat with with Simon. We do the why thing. Is
exactly.
Why do you do what you do? And so giving educators in the union a chance and the opportunity to sit back and really think about, okay, so how is that getting us to that? Is that getting us to that point? But just by asking those questions, kind of lays out your cards on the table and tells you where your heart is.
It does. We talked about a little bit earlier, Rick, that we both are big fans of Simon Sinek and Start With Why. One of the other guys I'm a huge fan of is, most people have heard of Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits of Almost Everything. Okay, his son, actually, Stephen M.R. Covey, wrote one of the most brilliant books I've ever read. His book is called The Speed of Trust.
Yeah, I have that. And Smart Trust. I've read Smart Trust. Yeah.
He talks about 3 levels of trust. Statutory trust is, you should trust me because I'm an elected official. You should trust me because I'm a police officer. You should trust me. He calls that the lowest level of trust.
Yeah, because we don't have much of that.
Exactly. The second level of trust he talks about is what he calls knowledge-based or competency-based trust, is you should trust me because I'm smart. And that's what we have been teaching leaders for years, is you're smarter than everybody else. Your people should trust you because you're smart, because you have an MBA or something like that. But then he gets to the real heart of the matter, which is the third level of trust, identity-based trust. Identity-based trust is something you earn one person at a time, one community at a time, one family at a time, and it says, I'm going to trust you because you say what you're going to do and then you do what you say. And I think that when I look at a lot of organizations over the 35 years that I've been doing this work, a lot of leadership doesn't realize that trust is a gift and leadership is a gift. It has to come from the people who choose to trust you.
And it's
And
earned.
Exactly.
Right.
It's not an entitlement. And if you don't recognize that, and one of the other things I do in my other life is I teach leadership. And the first thing I teach them is you will never be an effective leader until you build a foundation of trust. And the first thing that you need to realize about that is you're not entitled to that trust. You earn that trust every day.
So what is a major issue for you in Oregon as you're going in there wanting to be the representative from House District number 11? This is Mark Herbert, for those of you who just tuned in, running for House District 11, which is opened up because the former person who held that seat for many, many years is not running. And how many people are running in this?
Right now, there are 4 of us. There is another individual in the Republican primary with me, and then there are 2 individuals in the Democratic primary. So there's 4 of us in total running.
So what do you want to do?
What I want to do, Rick, is there are 3 big things. There are 3 big things for me. Okay, the first big thing for me that we need to address is economics. We are in a situation in Oregon where, even though we're in one of the most robust economies in history in the United States, there's still a lot of people, especially people in Oregon, that are not benefiting from that. And especially people in rural Oregon that are not benefiting from that.
Which is a lot of your...
Exactly. It's more than half of it.
Yeah.
Geographically, it's way more than half of it. From a population standpoint, it's a little bit less than half of it. And one of the things that bugs me a lot, we have 150,000 jobs in Oregon, family wage jobs, that we are not filling. And that's not news, okay? That's going on right now, that these are jobs that pay family wages that we're not filling. Because we can't find trained people to do that work. Because employers can't find people that have the skills to do them. That takes me to the next thing that concerns me a great deal. We are sitting here right now probably less than 2 or 3 miles from a world-class university. Okay, and I think everybody agrees that the University of Oregon is a world-class university. We've got another one up in Corvallis. Okay, our high school graduation rate, Rick, is number 48 out of 50 in the United States.
Do you know how much we, compared to other states, we spend on education?
I don't have that number. I don't have that number, but I look at it and say 48 out of 50 is unacceptable.
Bad.
And I believe a big part of that is because of the fact it is not just about funding, because I hear that a lot. It's a funding issue. What I would tell you is what I tell employers when I work with them. It's not a funding issue, it's an engagement issue. When 1 out of 4 seniors is dropping out before they graduate, it's not just about money. We are not engaging those students. We are not answering their why. What are you doing for me? So I would really like to see us take a look at the curriculums and how do we engage those students. I am a huge fan of what we now call CTE, Career and Technical Education. We used to call it VOCED. We have very little VOCED happening in Lane County and other parts of the state. We kind of moved away from it and said everybody needs to get a 4-year college degree.
And that's not true, is it?
It is not true. The other thing that the interesting part about it is the studies would tell you that when you do have a solid CTE or VOCED program, academic scores actually go up, Rick. With a solid VOCED program, they go up 15%. Graduation rates go up 15%. So it's the gift that keeps on giving. Not only do you engage students, but because they see real-time application of the academics rather than it just being in kind of some kind of a where there's no context, they do better academically. And we fill those 150,000 jobs. Then my third one.
Okay, good.
My third one is public safety is a huge issue at every level in Oregon. We have underfunded law enforcement at the state level, at the county level, and at the municipal level. And especially since I live in rural Oregon, as I know you do, that's a huge issue for us.
We have nothing against the sheriff's department.
Exactly.
But we don't call. When we live in the country, you guys, we don't call. There's no reason to call because, and they'll say, and I know I'm not supposed to say that, but it's true. You don't call because you're not going to get anything. It's just how it is.
Exactly. It is simply a matter where they do not have the funds to put deputies out there in patrol. And that's a horrific issue. And the answer to that is we've got to increase revenues. Okay. And when I look at the 150,000, jobs that are not being filled, that's a great vehicle for how you go out there and you get that funding. Is you don't raise minimum wages, you don't raise taxes on the taxpayer and on corporations. You put the 150,000 people back to work. That's 150,000 people who are now making a family wage job that can pay taxes, that can provide those services. And to me, there's the old expression, a rising tide raises all boats, not just your boat.
So everybody on my page knows that I'm not a big fan of either party. So
Okay.
we're all fair here. Everything's
Okay.
like open. We're being
Sure.
really open.
Sure.
But one of my real hardcore left-wing kind of guys who I really like, we fight a lot, but I like him a lot, came on one day and he says, Rick, we need more balance. He actually said this. We need more balance in the state because right now you've got one ideological group making all the decisions in the state. And they don't always reflect people, like in terms of Second Amendment rights.
Exactly.
Where are you at with that? And in Kate Brown's the governor's new proposal that would limit guns.
I am a supporter of the Second Amendment, and number one, and number two, basically, IP 43 is bad law. It is a legislative solution to a societal issue, and it just does not make sense. It especially has an impact on those of us living in rural communities because it's saying, okay, I've already said we don't have adequate law enforcement.
Right.
Now I'm going to take your guns away from you and take away your ability to protect yourself. So it's a double whammy. If we take a look at the issues with gun violence and all, that's not about gun ownership and that's not about law, Rick. There are societal things. That's about mental health. That's about a lot of things that just writing a law is not going to address it. So I support the Second Amendment. I support the right to responsible gun ownership. It is a fundamental right guaranteed by the Constitution. But like I said, I think the important thing is responsible gun ownership.
So are you is Justin your son? Or?
He is not. I would love to take credit. Actually, his dad and I share the same name and even the same dry cleaner. So I would love to be able to say that I'm connected to Justin. I am a Duck fan, and you go, Justin. Okay, but I can't take that credit as much as I would like to.
What else concerns you about the way that Oregon is going? Because I know you're a Republican running.
Right.
What happens to all of us in the middle? I feel like those of us who are not a right or a left, or the more moderates, and there's Republicans who are more moderate, and a lot of Democrats who are more moderate, but we feel like our voices are not being heard, and we get lost in the shuffle. What do we do?
Well, I think everybody needs to be heard, and I want to be clear, yes, I'm running as a Republican, Rick, but I am a moderate. Okay,
Yeah,
I am a moderate.
Yes, yeah.
I am very much a moderate, and when I tell people, actually when I was interviewed by the Register Guard, the guy that interviewed me, who I respect a great deal, he said, "You don't sound much like a Republican, Mark." And I said, "Au contraire, Jack. I sound exactly like a Republican. I sound like the Republican Party is based on some very basic things. Economic empowerment, that means the ability of individuals to provide economic security for themselves and to do well. Individual rights and freedoms, and respect for everybody as an individual. That's what the Republican Party stands for, and that's what I stand for. Some of the things that I'm saying that concern me coming out of Portland, it is not only one party, because in fact right now one party enjoys a majority and is very, very close to a supermajority, which is very, very dangerous. The second part about it is what's coming out of Salem is very urban-based. More specifically, it's Portland-based. There's a lot of Oregon that is not Portland.
Right.
And there is a lot of Oregon that is not urban, and I don't think the rights of those folks are being represented well. I've talked to constituents in my district that tell me that Representative Barnhart did a lot of things very well. Quite candidly, they did not feel like he represented them. Many of them said if they wanted to see their issues represented, they have felt obligated for the last 16 years to contact representatives from adjoining districts because Representative Barnhart did not represent them. I think the other thing that you need to remember is the idea of being a state representative means you represent everybody in your district, not just the people who voted for you and not just the people who agree with you.
That's hard for people to understand because when I ran for Secretary of State, they'd ask me, so what are you going to do for me? And I thought I'm here to serve everybody once I'm elected. And that is a foreign concept to a lot of politicians and even people who are really party hardies that throw that in there. Because I think that most people, once you get in there, you got to represent everybody in your district, and you have to represent them fairly. So that means sometimes you make a compromise and don't do everything you want to do, and you do things that are going to be good for your district.
Well, that's exactly right. I think what you have to do is you have to put your personal things aside to a certain extent and say, what is my district telling me? What are the citizens of Oregon telling me? And you need to respect that. And if you can't respect that, I believe that you need to do what I tell executives is if you're not supporting your business and you're not supporting the employees, you should step down. Okay, you should not be in there where you're trying to force your own agenda through there. And I think that, the partisanship that we're seeing, and let's be candid with each other, it's not just in Oregon, but it's gotten nasty and it's gotten snarky. And when I came here to Albert Taylor, and it's been pretty common for me when I come into a place, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration. I do not get a lot of calls that say things are going awesome. We have more customers than we need.
You get called when they're going bad.
Exactly. And when I sit down and say, let's focus on what we agree on, and what I think 99% of people agree on is I want to be respected as an individual.
Right.
I want to be treated fairly. I want to be heard. I want to provide economic and emotional security for my family. I want my kids to have the potential to have a better life than I do. One of the things that bothers me about Lane County even today is both of my kids went to the University of Oregon. And I had to tell both of them, when you graduate, in all likelihood, you're going to have to leave Lane County in order to get a good job.
Why?
Because there aren't the jobs here, Rick. Because 6 out of 10 jobs in Lane County are working for a government agency or a not-for-profit.
So as a business, as a guy who goes in and you reestablish business, you fix things that are going wrong. That's why people for the last 30 years have called you in. Is it 30 years or 35?
35.
35 years have called you in. Do you think okay, so let's just do this to you. We'll throw your stuff on you.
Sure.
So what's your why when it comes to, without sounding like a politician, what's your why for wanting to represent people in House District number 11?
I feel like I bring a skill set that nobody else in this race, and frankly not a lot of people in Salem bring right now. I'm not a politician. I'm a professional problem solver. And I have a very clear track record that I can point to that says over and over and over again, I was the guy that went in, was able to bring people who thought they had competing interests and find common ground and build solutions that work. And I think that's more of what we need. And that's what I want to bring to Salem. I want to reach across the aisle. I want to say, let's focus on the bigger picture and what we're trying to do, but let's focus on meaningful solutions that are not win-lose, that are win-win. And I've done that, and I'm proud of that. And that's a track record, and it's one that I've been able to accomplish some of here with Albert Taylor, and I did it as an executive with credit unions. I've done it as a management consultant, and a lot of it is listening to people, helping people, blocking and tackling for smart people, and doing the right things. And that's the skill set that I bring to my district, and that's the skill set I believe I would bring to Salem that I'm not seeing present today. Do
you think that you're probably going to irritate some people in Salem, and I would guess on both parties?
I'm a polarizing guy, Rick. If you went out and even in this organization today, you're going to find people who are fans, you're going to find people who are detractors. Some of the things that I've had to do as I've come in and helped businesses is there's people I've had to say to them is, you can't stay here anymore. Okay, you've demonstrated that you are not committed to our why. This isn't a good fit for you. And unfortunately for you, if it's not a good fit for you and you can't get behind our why and you can't play well with others, you need to go find another place to be. And it's not here. That doesn't always make you very popular when you go to somebody and say, okay, your exit just came up, and this is where you get off the freeway.
So Jason's asking, and CJ, what I'm going to have him do is Mark can go back and look at this and write in the comment section and answer. But Jason's asking, because I want you to clarify this for Jason. You encourage your children to leave and get a good job, yet we have hundreds of family wage jobs here.
Yep.
So kind of explain that. Seems
like
a contradiction.
We have hundreds of family wage jobs here now. Okay, the path that my kids took and everything like that were not those paths. Okay, a lot of the jobs that we have here are the jobs that are unfilled are jobs in industry. They're jobs in production. They're welders and things like that. Those were not my kids' orientation. The other thing that's happened though is we're starting to pick up jobs now. But let's look back. A few years ago, we had Hynix and we had Sony and we had those folks. Unfortunately, community leadership was not very hospitable to those businesses, and they left. And we have not seen businesses like that come back. And it's a case of, I'm not saying to my kids they can never come back, but for that student coming out of U of O looking for their first job.
Not in an industry like
exactly.
that kind of thing. It's hard. Okay.
It's harder for them.
So you guys, what I'll have Mark do is he can go back and reread this. CJ, you had a lot of specific questions, so I'm going to have Mark come in and he can kind of check in with you to get those answers. Also, you guys, if you have a question for Mark, just continue. This will live on my Facebook page. You can ask questions when we're not live on the air, and then Mark can go back and have a conversation with you. So the ballots are in the mail. They're actually at your home right now. And production jobs usually start at $10 an hour. That is not a family wage job.
Some production jobs start at $10 an hour. There are those, and you're right, $10 an hour is not a family wage job. But I can tell you in some of the manufacturing clients that I've had, that may be your starting wage, but that's not the wage you're going to make forever. As your skills increase, as your productivity increase, so do your wages increase. And I don't think it's uncommon that you see an entry-level wage when you're starting, when you're basically learning the job, and as you master that, we pay you more money. But you're right, $10 an hour is not a family wage job.
So again, you guys, get that ballot in. You vote as you wish, your conscience and what you think should be happening. But get educated about what you're doing. At least you heard from Mark. Find out what the other candidates think. If they're not giving you information, then that's what you get. But get the ballot in, because you know what we say on our show, and I have to use a semi-edgy word here.
That's okay.
If you don't vote, you don't get to bitch. That's
Absolutely.
just, you know what I mean? If you don't have the ability, good God, we send it to your house. It's right in front of you. So if you can't vote, then I don't listen. I ask people when they ask political questions, did you vote? And if they say no, I just get rid of them. You don't get to answer. So anyway, I want you to participate. You guys, this is a participatory, there's people in the world who would love to have the ability to do what we get to do.
And it's a responsibility, Rick, and you're right. Because what I tell people, it's not the person who wins the majority of it, it's the majority of the people who vote. So do you really want your representative decided by somebody else? Hey,
Frank, just so we're just at the tail end of this, but I was talking nice about you earlier, and I didn't use your name, but I was talking about my friend who's a Democrat who who thinks we need a little more representation, a little more equality. I can't remember how you said it, but you were saying we need a stronger Republican Party so we don't just have one party leading the thing.
I completely agree with Frank. In fact, if it's the Frank I think it is, we actually have some history together back at Spectre Physics.
He's a fisherman.
Yes.
Yep. He's good. Yeah, he's a good guy.
He's a very, very good guy.
Sometimes we go toe to toe, but you know what?
But balance.
He loves me.
Frank is absolutely right. Balance is very, very important.
It is important.
There's an old expression: power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Balance is very, very, very important.
All right. So you guys, if you have more questions, again, Mark will go on there and answer them. And yes, and that's not the guy.
Okay.
I don't know what that means, Frank, but we'll go on from there. So you guys, we're out of time. So tomorrow we're going to be talking to Court Boyce, who's running against Art Robinson for the 4th Congressional District. That's Peter DeFazio's seat. He's running on the Republican side. So we'll have that for you tomorrow. And we're going to be meeting. It's going to be a little controversial for some of you, but we're going to be meeting at a gun shop. We're talking guns and Second Amendment rights tomorrow with them. So, again, these are paid programs, so they get to say what they want. I get to ask questions, and so do you. All right, we'll talk to you guys later. Mark, thanks.
Thank you,
for
Rick.
letting people know who you are. And do your homework, guys. Do your homework.